My name is Sandra, and I'm 35 years old. I work in an office and currently live with my husband, Matthew, and his mother in their family home. Despite being married, I often feel an overwhelming sense of emptiness in my relationship, largely due to the relentless bullying from my mother-in-law, which shows no sign of improving. Matthew and I met through work, as our companies collaborated on several projects. Spending so much time together naturally brought us closer, and soon, we began going out on dates. After a year of dating, Matthew proposed, and at 32, I became his wife. In the beginning, our marriage was blissful. It was just the two of us, exploring life together. We both had thriving careers, and our weekends were filled with luxurious trips and gourmet dining. I envisioned a future filled with beautiful memories. But everything changed 3 years into our marriage when Matthew's father fell ill and passed away unexpectedly. Overcome with grief, Matthew suggested we move in with his mother. The idea caught me off guard. While I sympathized with her loss, we had only been married for 3 years, and I cherished our independence as a couple. Despite my reservations, I agreed to the move, wanting to support Matthew during such a difficult time. Living with my mother-in-law, however, proved to be a nightmare. Her treatment of me became increasingly harsh and unbearable. The warm woman who once welcomed me into the family now seemed determined to push me away. Then, in a shocking twist, she handed me divorce papers, insisting it would be best for everyone if Matthew and I separated. Confused and heartbroken, I decided to take a break. I moved back in with my parents for a month, seeking clarity and advice from my father. During this time, I made the difficult decision to file for divorce. It felt like the right thing to do. But soon after, my mother-in-law began calling incessantly, begging for forgiveness and admitting her mistakes. This was one of the most challenging periods of my life. It forced me to reevaluate my relationships, the boundaries I had allowed to blur, and the direction of my own happiness. Matthew, meanwhile, expressed a deep sense of responsibility toward his mother. As her only son, he felt obligated to care for her, especially after losing his father. "I wasn't there for my dad enough," he confided, his voice heavy with regret. "I need to do better for her." Although I understood his guilt, it didn't make our situation any easier. Moving in with his mother felt like a sacrifice of our independence as a couple. When we arrived, she greeted us warmly. "It's good to have you here," she said, addressing Matthew. "You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Matthew reassured her, saying, "We're here now, Mom. Everything will be okay." She responded with gratitude, but there was a distinct chill in her tone whenever she spoke to me. One evening, she prepared an array of pastries from her bakery, including her beloved almond paste treats. Matthew's eyes lit up with childlike joy as he praised her creations. For a fleeting moment, I shared in his happiness. But then, her tone shifted as she turned to me. "Sandra, are you all right? You look so lost," she said sharply. She suggested we make some coffee to accompany the pastries, and I hurried to find the coffee supplies. As I fumbled through the shelves, she snidely remarked, "Where are the coffee pots? You're so useless, aren't you?" Pointing to a cluttered shelf, she added with a dismissive tone, "Oh, look, they're over there, with the wife's stuff." Her words stung deeply. I had always tried to help around the house, but she seemed determined to paint me as incompetent. This interaction was a stark reminder of the challenging dynamics in the house and reinforced my doubts about moving in. Before we lived with her, we often visited her home. I would offer to help in the kitchen, but she always insisted, "No need, just sit down," effectively barring me from participating. Over time, I stopped offering, hoping it would ease the tension, but instead, it only seemed to worsen. She began snapping at me over minor things, and her remarks became increasingly unfair. After one particularly harsh comment, she fixed me with a stern gaze and demanded, "What's with that look? Do you have a problem?" I didn't want to escalate the situation, so I stayed silent, desperately hoping Matthew would step in, but he never did. I glanced over at him, silently seeking support, but he was glued to his phone, seemingly oblivious to the discomfort his mother was causing me. It was both frustrating and hurtful that he didn't notice, let alone address, the situation. That moment was just the beginning of what would become a challenging living arrangement. Almost immediately after moving in, issues began to surface. One morning, she barged into our room, exclaiming, "Sandra, why are you still sleeping?" I groggily glanced at my phone and was surprised to see it was only 6 a.m. "It's just 6 o'clock in the morning," I replied, still half asleep. "So what?" she snapped. "You should be up making breakfast, preparing Matthew's lunch, and don't forget, you're supposed to clean the bathroom every day." Her demands startled me. I had never prepared daily lunches for my husband since we often skipped breakfast. Not being morning eaters, the idea of cleaning the bathroom every morning before heading to work felt impractical and exhausting. Her expectations felt overwhelming, and as I hesitated to respond, her irritation grew. "Why are you just standing there? Hurry up! What kind of upbringing did you have to turn out so useless?" She scolded harshly. Her cutting words struck a nerve, igniting a mix of anger and determination within me. From that point on, I resolved to meet her expectations head-on. I began waking up at 6 a.m. every day, preparing elaborate breakfasts and lunches, not just for my husband but also for myself. I kept the bathroom impeccably clean and found a surprising sense of satisfaction in maintaining a spotless home. My husband noticed my efforts and occasionally expressed gratitude for the meals and the clean house. However, despite my increased efforts, my mother-in-law's attitude didn't improve. Instead, her demands escalated. One day, she insisted on Japanese cuisine. The next, it was French, followed by homemade pizza or freshly cooked pasta paired with red wine from upscale shops. What began as occasional requests quickly became daily expectations. The most frustrating part? My husband always sided with her. "Make sure you do it exactly how my mom wants," he'd say, offering no help and leaving everything to me. Our precious days off were consumed by preparing elaborate meals to please her, while she continued to relentlessly critique my choices. "You're a wife. Why are you still working? You should be at home supporting your husband," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "And don't forget, you're getting older. Your time to have children is running out. Do you realize you're almost worthless?" Her words were not only demanding but deeply hurtful. They forced me to reflect on the toxicity of the situation and question how long I could endure living under such scrutiny and pressure. One particularly stressful day, after work and another round of tension with my mother-in-law, my husband confronted me. "My mom says you're neglecting the housework. Is that true?" he accused. "Do you really believe her?" I asked, incredulous. "Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? Are you suggesting my mom is lying?" His tone was sharp, filled with accusation. "You're acting terribly as a wife. Can't you just fulfill your role properly?" I was furious at his lack of understanding and support. "What are you talking about? Look for yourself. I cook, clean, do laundry, and make lunches every day," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You're lying. What mom says is true," he snapped, dismissing my efforts. "Stop acting crazy." "Crazy? You're such a mama's boy. You never believe me or help me with anything," I retorted, and the argument escalated, leaving both of us angry and resentful. From that day forward, home became increasingly unbearable. Whenever my mother-in-law criticized or harassed me, my husband echoed her insults. "Hey, is dinner ready? I just got home, hurry up." he demanded one evening, as his mother chimed in. You're so slow and useless. Exhausted and isolated. I muttered under my breath. You're both failures. They decided to go out to eat without me. Never mind. Let's just go out, Matthew suggested abruptly. That sounds good. Let's go. His mother agreed enthusiastically. They left, excluding me entirely, a glaring reminder of how disconnected I had become from what was supposed to be my family. Day after day, I endured their relentless insults and belittlement. It made me question whether staying in such a marriage was worth it. Then, life handed me an unexpected opportunity to change everything. As I pondered this new chance, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I finally realized I didn't have to endure this toxic environment any longer. You're worthless as a daughter-in-law. I can't fathom how my son ended up marrying you, my mother-in-law scolded one day, with Matthew smirking beside her, clearly enjoying the moment. I stood up with unwavering resolve. I'm going back to my parents' house for a month, I announced firmly. They stared at me, shocked and angry. What about the house? What if there's a problem? Matthew stammered, panic evident in his voice. You're being incredibly irresponsible. If you leave, then just divorce my son, his mother shouted, pulling out divorce papers from a drawer and thrusting them at me. Go ahead. Sign them, she challenged. Oh, Mom, you were prepared for this? Matthew remarked, clearly taken aback. That's right. You have no choice but to obey us. If you don't like it, then get a divorce, she declared. Fine, let's get divorced, then, I responded decisively, surprising them both. Their eyes widened in shock, but I ignored their reactions. With steady hands, I began filling out the divorce papers, finally taking the first step toward reclaiming my life. I'm done with my part, so please leave quickly, I said, my voice steady. Matthew blinked in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the assertive woman standing before him with the one he thought he could easily manipulate. Was that earlier just a bluff? That's lame, he muttered, unable to grasp that I was genuinely reclaiming my life and independence. When I insisted on finalizing the divorce, his demeanor shifted dramatically. He glared at me sharply. Don't mess around, he spat. I'm serious, I replied firmly, my resolve unwavering. Without another word, Matthew snatched the divorce papers from my hands and swiftly filled in his section. He slammed them down on the table. Is this good enough? He asked, his tone bitter. Even if you want to take it back, it's too late. Oh well, this means it's over for you too, he declared, a cold laugh escaping as he tried to mask his dismay with bravado. His mother chimed in, her voice trembling with anger. In my heart, I thought, it's not just over for me, it's truly over for you. Without further delay, I left their house and immediately submitted the divorce papers. When I returned to my parents' home, I recounted everything to my father, who was shocked but reassured me of his unwavering support. A month later, my phone began buzzing incessantly with calls from my former mother-in-law. Hello? What do you want? I answered, already weary. My dear, we're strangers now, she began, her voice pleading. Please don't say that. Matthew and I are in a difficult situation. Her words dripped with insincerity. Oh, really? That must be tough for you, I replied curtly. Her tone turned sarcastic, the pretense quickly dropping. I haven't even said anything yet. I'd rather end this call. Can I hang up now? I interrupted, eager to disconnect. Wait, she cried. I have a favor to ask. Can you talk to your father? Why should I? After everything you and Matthew put me through? I snapped, irritation bubbling to the surface. I'm sorry about that, she stammered, her voice trembling with desperation. I didn't realize your father's company is an important business partner of Matthew's. Her words hit hard. My father ran a successful company that had dealings with Matthew's firm. We had probably discussed this before getting married. But back then, my father-in-law had handled those matters, and my mother-in-law had stayed out of it. When my father decided to sever business ties, Matthew's company had tried to salvage the contract by offering to let him go. In the end, Matthew lost his job. The irony wasn't lost on me. Matthew, who had always sided with his mother and dismissed me, was now facing the consequences of his arrogance. To finance his ambitious plans to remodel the family home, he had taken out a substantial loan. With his recent unemployment, managing the repayments became nearly impossible. Up until our divorce, I had contributed significantly to our household expenses, helping keep everything afloat. Now, with the divorce finalized, Matthew and his mother were left in a precarious financial situation. Why did you feel the need to show off by remodeling the house, Matthew? I thought, you're just like your mother, proud and reckless. A few days later, my mother-in-law called again, her tone desperate. Please help me, she begged. I'm sorry for my mistakes. I can't forgive you for what you've done. I responded firmly. If you're expecting me to help, it's pointless. Instead, focus on finding a job even if it's temporary. This conversation is over. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Eventually, I learned that Matthew and his mother couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments and were forced to sell the house. It was a relatively new home, one that could have supported my mother-in-law through her retirement. Their poor financial management and unnecessary extravagance had led to a waste of opportunity. They relocated to a modest apartment on a small island, where my ex-husband now works part-time. They rely on my former mother-in-law's pension to make ends meet, a far cry from the life they once envisioned. Meanwhile, I was preparing for a significant change in my own life. Instead of renting a new place immediately, I decided to stay with my parents until my departure. This time with them felt precious, and I cherished every moment before moving overseas. I was filled with excitement and hope for a fresh start in a different country. Despite the difficulties of my past, I remained optimistic about the future. Perhaps I would meet someone wonderful abroad and explore the possibility of an international marriage. As for Matthew and his mother, I genuinely wished them happiness, though I no longer wanted them in my life. Thank you for following my story. If you found it engaging, please consider subscribing to the channel. I look forward to sharing more updates and stories as I embark on this exciting journey.